So before we get into the video today, I want to take a minute and talk about deck building and crediting lists. And starting off here, we are on PTCG Archive. And being completely upfront today, the list that I'm going to talk about, it's my variation of Flygon, but I borrowed very heavily from Stefan From, who finished second at Worlds. And I used his Worlds list as kind of my starting point, and then I did a lot of my own testing, and I made my own changes to it, and I kind of adapted it for the meta I've seen today, and I'm going to give you what I feel is the best list for the deck. Now, saying all of that, one of my biggest frustrations and my biggest pet peeves in the game is that I feel like players are not willing or don't give credit to where they get their list from, or where they get a base list from for something. People just don't seem to want to credit where they're getting the list from, because I feel like people feel like it'll reflect poorly on them, or they won't get all the credit, quote unquote, they deserve because they took the base list from somewhere. And I think that's just such a horrible attitude to have. One, because if you did get that base list from somewhere, if you did take a list from somewhere, credit the person who put all that time and testing into it. And that's not to say that you didn't put your own time and your own testing into it. And you didn't make your own changes to it, but literally if you're taking a list and then making, 2 to 3 card differences, or even 4 to 5 card differences, and the concept's not yours, or the base list isn't yours, just be upfront and say that. Before I drag this out too long, all I'm saying is that should be the attitude of every player. If you're taking an idea, a concept, even I thought, I took the idea of Nidoqueen and Flygon, or I thought the idea of Nidoqueen being a great partner for Flygon, I took that from Stefan From. Just be upfront about that. Yeah, that's all I'll say. Hey everybody. This week we'll be taking a look at a Flygon deck from the 2007 format. Not only is Flygon one of my absolute favorite Pokemon, I also feel this deck was very underplayed that year, and it's a great meta choice. So let's just go ahead and jump right on in here. Starting off, we play 4 copies of Holon's Castform. Holon's Castform not only lets us set up, it also combos really well with the Flygon EX, which I'll talk about in a little bit here. I also play 1 copy of Jirachi. Now, you'll see in a lot of my lists, I'll do a 3-1 split here for a room, but surprisingly, this is a deck where I found that I actually do have some space to play around with, and I added that 4th Holon's Castform to the deck. Not only does that give us a little bit more consistency and a little bit more freedom with the energy, but with a deck like this, having a good start is so essential to you, and adding a 5th quote-unquote starting Pokemon really just helps tilt those odds in our favor. Next up, I play 4 copies of Trapinch. I went with the Grass Trapinch. I do find that Big Bite can be really useful. There's not a whole lot of switching effects in this format, so being able to lock, say, a Holon's Castform active at the start of the game can buy you a couple of turns if needed. It also only has a grass weakness, which is also useful since there's not a lot of great grass Pokemon in this format. 2 copies of Vibrava. I also found this to be the best Vibrava and that was available to us. I didn't really see much of a point in splitting those copies, going 1-1 or so. And then next up, I play 4 copies of Flygon EX Legend Maker. So basically what Flygon does is, when you play it from your hand, you get to search your discard pile for 2 energies and attach them to Flygon. They can be any energy, so we can grab back Boost Energy, Rainbow, React, and attach them to Flygon. Now, where this comes into effect with Holon's Castform is we can grab Boost and say Rainbow Energy, bounce the Rainbow for Holon's Castform, and in 1 turn we can go from having no energy on board to hitting our opponent for 100 damage. So the first attack, Reactive Blast here, hits for 40, and then you can discard any number of React energies to it, and it'll do 30 more for each React energy you discard. Now this can be really strong because a lot of Pokemon in the format only have 70 HP or less. If you're looking at Holon's Castform, Lickitung is very common, general basics like Trapinch in general. So a lot of the time you don't need to look for that, I'm going to do 100 damage. Being able just to grab back a Rainbow Energy and a React Energy will net you a prize a lot of the time. And you can even do situations where you can grab Rainbow React, bounce the Rainbow for a Castform, do 40, discard for 30 to do 70 total, and then next turn you're just a boost energy away from being able to do the 100 damage. Speaking of the 100 damage with Dragon Claw, 100 damage is a really, really good number to hit in this format. It knocks out a lot of stuff. All the evolutions, with some exceptions. It knocks out Jolteon, I guess I should say, and then we can modify that with Strength Charm and Plus Power to hit Espeon or Umbreon, Nidoqueen, Banette EX. There's just a whole list of things that 100 damage just hits really nicely in this format. I also went with a 4-2-4 line. One of the biggest flaws in 2007 is you really don't have very good Pokemon retrieval. We could play Hole-on Farmer, but I really don't want to send Basic Energy back in. I don't really want to waste my supporter for the turn to do it. It just made more sense to me to play a thicker Flygon line, because I knew 3-2-3 Flygon was probably not going to be enough for us. And instead of playing a 3-2-3 and a Farmer, it just made more sense to me to play a 4-2-4. That helps with bad prizes. It also allows us to more easily react if, let's say, a Flygon gets knocked out. Then we don't need to take the time to do that farm return to get it back into the deck. I went with the 2-1-2 Nidoqueen. Nidoqueen is just outstanding. Invitation lets you search your deck for a Pokemon, put it into play, or put it into your hand. Not only does this help you set up, or it guarantees that you'll set up, it also thins your deck. Both of which are going to be very useful, especially in a deck like this where we want to be able to find our boost energies, our plus power, strength charm, any of this stuff when we need it. Being able to thin our deck is just going to help with that. And the Attack Vengeance does 30 damage plus 10 more damage for each basic each Pokemon in your discard pile. You can't add more than 60 damage this way. So essentially, once you have 6 Pokemon in the discard pile, you hit for 90 damage. And once again, 90 damage is great in this format, where you can knock out, like I said, Banette EX, Lucario, just a bunch of different things. And one of the things I really liked about this deck is how easy it is to alternate between EX attackers and non-EX attackers. You can line it up very nicely where your opponent will have to knock out, let's say, 3 Flygon and then a Nidoqueen, or 2 Flygon, Nidoqueen, and then finally a 3rd Flygon. Or you can send 2 Nidoqueen, let's say your opponent knocks out a Holen's Cast form, you can make them fight through 2 Nidoqueens and then 2 Flygons. And just being able to have a non-EX attacker that hits for really, really good damage in this format is just outstanding. Next up, we play 1 Slugma, 1 Magcargo. I don't know, like Magcargo, it has tested well enough, it's worth keeping. This format is hard because you want some sort of consistency card. Porygon 2 just really isn't that great because everybody always has such big hand sizes since there's no real hand control in the format. Milotic Delta is so inconsistent, you don't know what you're going to get with it. And Magcargo is just the most consistent option, especially when we want to be able to find, like I said, boost energy, plus power, strength charm when we need it. I would not play more than a 1-1 line. I just don't think a 2-2 line is useful. I shouldn't say not useful, I just don't think it's needed. I also want to add that Magcargo can use Knockover to discard a Stadium in play. Since we're only playing 3 Windstorm, if we do get ourselves into some trouble with, say, Crystone, for example, Crystal Beach, and we do need to get rid of it, Magcargo is going to be an option for us. We can trade essentially probably a prize to get rid of that Stadium. Then 1 Holen's Magnemite. Holen's Magnemite is just really common. About every deck in the format plays either Magnemite or Voltorb. It's just great to be able to grab it off of Hole-on Mentor. 4 Hole-on Transceiver, 3 Mentor. I do like to play the bumped up Mentor line in this. I think a lot of decks of the time you'll see a 4-2 Mentor line, and I think 4-3, and even in an RS to PK, you see a lot of people do a 4-2 line. I really do think for consistency, there is a lot of, think you make a lot of really good arguments to play that extra Mentor copy in here, just because that gives you 4-3, 7 outs, and essentially if you draw 7 at the start of the game, and you draw 1 for 8, you 7 times 8, 56. You should essentially pretty good odds of either starting with the Transceiver or the Mentor. And especially in a deck like this where you want to be able to search those cast forms out later on in the game, Mentor is just always going to be a good option for you. 2 Adventurer. I usually split the Adventurer with, say, like TV Reporter, Steven's Advice, other cards like that, but I'm already playing Stevens, and it didn't really seem right to play just a single copy of TV Reporter. Adventurer, playing the second copy of Adventure just helps us, just in case it stops us from prizing it, essentially. One Holon's Researcher. Holon's Researcher essentially is going to help us get out the Nidoqueen line. Obviously, it'll grab Trapincher, Vibrava as well, but once we hit this Nidoqueen line, this is a big power spike for the deck because it's going to become so much easier to set up literally everything else. 1 Holon Scientist, 4 Rare Candy, 3 Warp Point, and Warp Point is something I want to talk about. I did take that from Stefan From. He played, I think, 2 Warp Point and a Switch in the deck, and at first that looked really unusual to me, but one of the things that I liked about it was the fact that Warp Point acts as a pseudo Cessation Crystal counter. So essentially, to counter Cessation Crystal, I've got 3 Windstorm and then 3 Warp Point. So I'll have 6 outs to it. This allows me to move them back to the bench and then activate my powers again. That way I can get a Flygon Emerald charge off, or Emerge charge off, or I can use Invitation, Smooth Over, whatever I need in that situation. Warp Point also combos really well with the Jirachi, so I can safely make a Wishing Star play and have at least a chance in the deck, or a guaranteed chance if I play Macargo, that I will be able to search, or I will be able to get that Warp Point off. 3 Windstorm. There's just a lot in this format. Curse Stone hurts us, Crystal Beach hurts us, Cessation Crystal hurts us. We just want to make sure we can get those stadiums out of the way. 2 Steven's Advice. 2 Stevens, I think, is a good number for this format. Sometimes, like I said, your hand size will get very large, so it can be hard to use Stevens. But at the same time, too, almost a lot of the decks in the format use this Holon's Cast Form Mentor engine to set up. So Steven's Advice should be netting you 4 to 6 cards typically. And it's just too good not to play, especially at the start of the game. 1 Giant Stump. This gives us a total of 4 outs here. Giant Stump is testing okay. It's alright. I really haven't found it to be incredibly disruptive to the opponent. Yeah, there's some decks it hurts, like Meta Knight has a hard time with it. But at the same time, too, what it's mainly in the deck for is, let's say a Flygon EX, we get our Emerge charge off, we get our big attacks off, and it's about ready to get knocked out. And at 150 hit points, it could take a little bit to get it knocked out. Essentially, I'm going to be able to Warp Point it back to the bench, Giant Stump it, completely get it out of play, and hopefully deny our opponent some prizes. I've also tested Holon Ruins in the deck, and I actually like that, I think, almost a little bit better than the Giant Stump, because that comboed really well with Nidoqueen, discarding Pokemon, Macargo getting that free draw off, giving me the ability to discard energy, but I think for the format and for playing in a tournament, I do like Giant Stump a little bit better. I think Holon Ruins is probably better for consistency, but Stump is the overall stronger card. 1 String Charm, 1 plus power. I do like the fact that to add that 10 damage, sometimes you do come up just a little bit shy. Some decks you'll need to save them both, play them at the same time. Other times, like I said, when you're playing against Evolution sort of decks where they're playing Espeon or they're playing Umbreon, you do need to find that 10 damage, and String Charm plus power is going to help you out. It also helps with Nidoqueen numbers as well. I found them really useful. I did test a 3rd copy. I didn't really like it. I didn't really need it. I won't say I didn't like it. I will say I didn't find it to be incredibly useful. And then the other thing I want to mention is sometimes I'll see people play 2 or 3 plus power, and 99% of the time it's not going to matter. But you should always be splitting these. You should be playing at least 1 String Charm before your plus power bees. You can still play them down together, but the advantage of playing the String Charm is you can attach it to a Pokemon and it does not get discarded at the end of the turn. So essentially, let's say I had 7 cards, I can attach a String Charm, Steven's Advice, or if I needed to, let's say, make a Holon Scientist play, but I wasn't sure I needed the String Charm this turn, Things like that, it's always worth playing the one Strength Charm. I will note, though, if you do play on TCG1, just be a little cautious that you don't accidentally use Windstorm to discard your own Strength Charm. But it is the correct choice to make the split there. 4 boost energy combos with everything in the deck. Flygon, Nidoqueen, just absolutely outstanding. 3 rainbow energy. Once again, you need to make sure you have that Grass Lightning for 2 hit for 100. Combos well with that. You can also combo it to use Metallic Blow on Jirachi if the matchup needs that. 3 react energy. I would like a 4th react in here. I really do. I found that you don't need the 100 damage every turn. A lot of the time, like I said, 40 plus discarding a react is usually good enough. Especially there's turns too where I don't want to burn a boost, and essentially I can just burn a react energy instead. It's played really well for me. Like I said, I would like a 4th. 3 has been playing okay though. And then just 1 lightning energy. I think you can make a good argument to go to 4 rainbow and not play the lightning, but that 10 damage does hurt in some matchups. I've also thought about doing the opposite and maybe playing, let's say, like a lightning grass and 1 rainbow or something like that. But so far, like I said, this energy lineup has been playing really well for me. All right, so that's going to go ahead and wrap up the deck profile, and we'll go ahead and move into some talk about matchups and how the deck interacts with the rest of the format. So talking about matchups in 2007, I find that most decks are pretty even with each other. It depends a lot on the deck list, the player, and how quick of a start you get. So I'll find most matchups are going to be even. You are going to have some that are going to lean towards favorable and some that are going to lead towards unfavorable. Favorable matchups I find for the deck are going to be decks that rely on Pokemon with less than 100 hit points. Banette EX I found to be generally favorable, as well as Lucario builds are going to be generally favorable as well. Unfavorable matchups are going to be Speed Spread. It's very hard to play around the Jirachi lock they can do. That's what happened in the Finals of Worlds that year, and that's how the Flygon player lost. I don't think the matchup is an auto loss. I think it relies pretty heavily on you getting a quick Flygon out and then having enough time to manually attach to a second one. Beyond that, I think it just depends on their deck and what tricks they can pull off. The electric resistance helps, but at the same time, too, they have a lot of different ways to put damage on the field with cards like Jolteon EX and Absol EX beyond just straight attacking you. Sceptile EX is also, and obviously causes problems for the deck as well. Most decks will play a 101 Sceptile line, so it's not always the most consistent counter to your deck. Sometimes they'll prize a piece of it. Other times they will not be able to get it out as quickly. For example, Argon decks that play Sceptile EX, it's very hard for them to put pressure on you and get a Sceptile EX out early at the same time. So ideally, in both those matchups, you're going to want to get a Flygon down as quickly as possible. Try to get those free energy in play as easily as you can. But since your deck relies on streaming together multiple Flygons over the course of the game, both those decks can cause problems for you. And then in the middle here is where I find most matchups fall is just even. It depends really heavily on how quick of a start they can get, especially for some of these fast decks in 2007. Infernape's a great example of this. I think Infernape's a pretty good matchup for you, but at the same time, you are going to be weak to... Being weak to Colorless is going to make you weak to Delcat EX, which is going to give them 2 free prizes at some point in the game. So it's basically, if they can go up 2, 3, 4 prizes on you before you really get going, they can usually steal the last 1 or 2 prizes. At the same time, though, if you can get going quickly and you're able to start knocking out Infernapes and you're putting them on the back foot where they need to constantly find another Infernape or a double Rainbow Energy to answer your Flygon EX, it's going to be very favorable. Same with Banette EX. If you can, they have to 2-shot you, you 1-shot them. As long as you can put it in a situation where they're struggling to find Banette EXs and you are doing well in chaining Flygons together, it's going to be a pretty favorable matchup. Beyond that, like I said, it just comes down to who's going to get a faster start for most matchups for the deck. Obviously, in 2007, there's a lot of knowing how to play certain matchups and then knowing... how do I want to say it? There's a lot of knowing how to play matchups and then just knowing or being able to string those Flygons together. In 2007, I think 2 of the biggest weaknesses in the format is there's not a Pokemon recovery card. And then the other one is there isn't really any sort of hand disruption. So it's not like if a deck like Infernape or Benetti X gets up 4 or 5 prizes on you, that you can come back and then just Rocket's admin or end them to a 1 or 2 card hand and then steal a game away from them. That sort of thing just doesn't happen in this format. So